Mom and Dad said you never contribute anything to this family. My sister said it like a punchline, and everyone laughed. Glasses clinked. Forks hit plates. Their smiles looked rehearsed, their pride borrowed. I just sat there cutting my food into perfect pieces, pretending the words didn't sting. They didn't know I'd been wiring $8,000 every month to keep their picture-perfect house alive. 3 years of silence disguised as duty. That night, under the golden chandelier, I smiled for real for the first time, because the next sentence out of my mouth would change everything they thought they knew about me. The Vaughn house always looked like a magazine spread, white marble floors, gold-trimmed mirrors, candles that smelled like approval. Mom made sure of it. Every Thanksgiving, she arranged the table like it was her stage linen napkins folded like swan's plates that had never seen a dishwasher. She believed perfection could silence truth. And for years, it almost did. I grew up learning how to stay small inside that house. Melissa was the headline daughter, the teacher, the achiever, the one who made Mom glow. I was the quiet one, the background blur in family photos. "You're just not expressive enough," Rachel, Mom used to say as she fixed Melissa's hair for pictures. Dad would just nod, lost somewhere between guilt and wine. Dinner that night was no different. The air smelled like rosemary and money. Greg, my brother-in-law, bragged about his new car. Mom laughed too loud. Dad poured another glass of Merlot, eyes down. The conversation was a performance we'd all rehearsed for years. Praise Melissa, ignore Rachel. When my sister stood up, glass in hand, I knew something was coming. She always liked the spotlight, and I'd learned to brace myself for whatever joke she'd make at my expense. But this one was different. It wasn't teasing. It was venom disguised as charm. "Mom and Dad said you never contribute anything to this family." She paused for effect, waiting for their approval. They didn't disappoint. Laughter rippled around the table, sharp and shallow. Even Dad's lips curved before guilt caught up to him. I watched the roast glisten in the center, the candlelight flickering off the gravy boat. Beautiful, flawless, staged. I forced a smile, the one they expected, the quiet girl pretending not to bleed. But inside, something shifted. A pressure I'd held for years finally cracked. They thought my silence meant surrender. It never occurred to them it could mean strategy. As Melissa basked in their applause, I thought of every payment, every month I'd drained my savings to keep this house standing. 3 years of sacrifice they never noticed. Maybe I'd done it for love once. Maybe for peace. But sitting there, surrounded by their laughter, I realized I'd been buying something else entirely, the illusion that I still belonged. And that illusion was about to end. After everyone left that night, I sat in my car, hands gripping the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white. The laughter still echoed in my head, bright, hollow, endless. I stared at the house, glowing behind me, the one I'd kept alive like an ungrateful patient. I used to think silence was love. But silence was the leash they'd given me, and I'd worn it proudly. 3 years earlier, that same house had looked different. I remember the night Dad showed up at my apartment, rain on his coat, shame in his eyes. He stood there like a man half his size, clutching a folder. "If your mother finds out," he said, voice cracking, "it'll destroy her." He didn't ask for money, not at first. He asked for time, for help, for a secret. Then he slid the mortgage papers across my tiny kitchen table. The ink looked heavy, like confession. "We refinanced twice," he whispered. "If we miss another payment, we lose the house." "How much?" I asked. He hesitated. $8,000 a month. 8,000. That was almost everything I had after bills. My promotion had just come through, senior financial analyst, decent pay, long hours. I could barely afford my own life. But when I looked at him, at the desperation in his hands, I said yes. Because daughters fix what fathers break, right? I told myself it was temporary. A few months, maybe a year. But months became years, and temporary became another family tradition. They remodeled the kitchen, hosted parties, bragged about hard-earned stability. Mom even joked once, "You see, Rachel, when you build wisely, life rewards you." I almost laughed. Every transfer I made was invisible. I never missed a payment. I skipped vacations, declined invitations, watched my savings disappear in quiet obedience. And they kept their story. I was the underachiever, the outsider, the one who never quite fit their perfect frame. That night after Melissa's toast, I opened my banking app. 36 transactions stared back, each one a scar. I scrolled through them slowly, feeling every number like a bruise. 8,000, another 8,000, another. Something inside me went still. Not angry, not sad, just clear. They didn't owe me thanks, but I no longer owed them my silence. I looked out the window at the streetlight pooling gold on wet pavement. My reflection stared back calm and cold. Tomorrow, I thought. Tomorrow, they'll see contribution measured in zeros and in boundaries. I closed the app, powered off my phone, and exhaled. For the first time in years, my chest didn't feel heavy. I wasn't losing a family. I was reclaiming myself. The next morning, the city was still gray and half asleep when I sat at my kitchen counter, coffee cooling beside me. The numbers from last night wouldn't leave my mind. 3 years, 36 payments, $288,000. I opened my laptop, logged into my bank, and hovered over the automatic transfer. The button glowed blue, harmless, ordinary. I stared at it until my eyes stung. Then I clicked cancel. A single ping confirmed it. That tiny sound felt louder than every insult they'd ever thrown my way. For a moment, guilt tried to crawl back in. The part of me that still wanted to be the good daughter, the fixer, the peacekeeper. But peace, built on secrets, isn't peace. It's a contract signed in silence. I'd already paid the price. I opened a spreadsheet and typed out every payment I'd made, date, amount, reference number, evidence neat and undeniable. Each row steadied me. I wasn't erasing the past, I was documenting it. This wasn't revenge, it was record-keeping. It was truth. My phone buzzed with a message from Melissa family dinner again tonight. Don't be late, Mom made your favorite. My favorite. She always used that line like bait. I stared at the screen and almost laughed. Not this time. I put on my gray blazer, the one that made people at work listen when I spoke. At the office, I finished reports, answered emails, smiled when people passed by. No one knew that under the calm, something was shifting. Freedom doesn't shout. It hums quietly beneath your ribs, waiting for the right moment. That night, I drove to the house again. The windows glowed warm, the smell of garlic and wine spilling into the driveway. Inside, I could already hear their voices, light, cheerful, fake. As I stood at the door, I took one long breath. I wasn't here to argue. I wasn't here to explain. I was here to end it. I stepped inside. Mom greeted me with her usual tight hug that felt like inspection. Melissa smiled like she owned the room. Dad looked tired, older. Perfect timing, Mom said. We were just talking about gratitude. So was I. Dinner began like any other performance, too bright, too polite, too polished. The table shimmered under the chandelier, every dish gleaming like it had been arranged for a photo shoot. Mom loved the illusion of control. Even her salads had choreography. Greg poured wine like a sommelier on TV while Melissa retold the story of her latest classroom triumph. I sat quietly counting seconds between fake laughter. Dad barely looked up. His fork scraped the edge of his plate with rhythmic guilt. He knew. Maybe not what was about to happen, but enough. I could see it in the way he avoided my eyes. Rachel? Mom said, suddenly smiling too wide. You've been quiet again. Everything okay at work? Busy, I said. But good. Melissa chuckled. Busy surviving, right? Greg laughed, joining her rhythm like it was a duet. Come on, she's fine. She loves her spreadsheets. I smiled thinly. They keep me honest. Mom tisked softly, as if honesty were impolite. You know, if you just let loose a little? She can't, Melissa interrupted, waving her fork. Rachel doesn't know how to contribute unless it's silent. The air shifted almost imperceptibly. Dad cleared his throat. Melissa. But she was already leaning forward, eyes bright with self-righteousness. Mom and Dad said you never contribute anything to this family, she declared, just like before. And honestly, they're not wrong. It was the same line, same tone, but this time I was ready. The room laughed again reflexively like trained applause. That's when I smiled, a small, precise smile that didn't belong to the girl they thought they knew. Perfect, I said softly, setting down my fork. The laughter wavered, unsure where to go. Then I continued, the $8,000 I've been paying for your mortgage every month stops today. The room froze. Greg blinked. What Dad coughed, a sharp choking sound that cut through the silence. Mom's wine glass tilted dangerously before she set it down. Melissa stared at me face blank like she hadn't learned the language I was speaking. I reached into my purse, pulled out my phone, and slid it onto the table. "Here," I said, tapping the screen. 36 transactions glowed in the reflection of the chandelier. Every month, 3 years, 8,000 each. Nobody moved. Mom's lipstick quivered. "You?" Dad asked me, I said evenly. "The business failed, the partner disappeared. He didn't want you to know." All eyes turned to him. His shoulders caved. He didn't deny it. "You said it would ruin her," I reminded him gently. "And I believed you." "Rachel, please." Mom whispered, color draining from her face. "Not like this, like what I asked. Publicly, loudly. You preferred quiet, didn't you? That's what I've been paying for your silence." Melissa stood up. "This is manipulation." "No," I said, standing too. "This is math." She opened her mouth again, but I was faster. "You mocked me for not contributing. Let's measure it. $288,000. How much did your applause cost?" Greg's voice cracked. "You could have said something." I laughed once, low and tired. "I did, every month. Through my bank." Dad finally spoke, voice small. "We were desperate. I thought—" "You thought I wouldn't notice what it cost me," I said. "You were right, until now." Mom's eyes glistened. "We're family. You can't just stop." "I already did," I said. "Automation canceled this morning." The silence that followed was heavy trembling. The only sound was the hum of the refrigerator and Dad's shallow breath. Melissa crossed her arms. "You're punishing them." I met her eyes. "No. Punishment ends. Boundaries begin." Her jaw clenched. "You're selfish." "I've been selfless for 3 years," I said. "Look where it got me." Mom's hand trembled as she reached for my sleeve. "Please, we can fix this." I stepped back. "Fix it with your own money." Her hand fell. Dad looked at me like a man finally realizing the depth of his own reflection. "Rachel," he whispered, "I didn't think it'd go this far." "It already did," I said. "You just never looked down." For a long moment, nobody spoke. The golden room, once so pristine, looked warped under the truth. Then I said the last thing I'd come to say. If contribution means pretending you win, if it means sacrifice, I already did my part. I picked up my phone, slid it into my bag, and pulled my coat from the chair. "Rachel, wait," Mom said weakly. "Don't go." I paused in the doorway, light pooling around me. "Start contributing," I said quietly, "to the truth." And then I left. Outside, the cold hit like a baptism. The sky was a blank, merciful gray. My phone started buzzing in my pocket, Dad, then Mom, then Melissa. I let it ring. For years, I'd been funding their silence. Tonight, I finally earned mine. The calls kept coming that night, missed calls, voicemails, messages stacked like apologies. I wasn't ready to open. I let them echo into the dark while I sat on my couch, wrapped in the kind of quiet that didn't hurt anymore. It was strange how peace could sound so much like absence. Days passed, then weeks. I didn't send another $1. Eventually, the text changed tone from angry to pleading to resigned. The house went up for sale in the spring. I drove past it once, just once, to see the for sale sign tilted in the wind. The windows were dark. No candles, no performance, no applause. Mom emailed me months later. "We're moving into a condo. Smaller, but it feels lighter," she wrote. Beneath it was one line that almost undid me. "I'm sorry we didn't see you. Melissa called too." Her voice was soft, unsure. She said they'd started counseling. She said she finally understood what contribution really meant. I didn't rush to forgive her, but I listened. Sometimes that's enough to start over. Dad sent a photo of the new place. No marble floors, no chandelier, just sunlight through a kitchen window and a coffee mug in his hand. He looked real. I never moved back into their story. I stayed in mine. I bought a small apartment with big windows, the kind where morning light doesn't ask permission to enter. Some nights I still hear that laughter from the dinner table, sharp and hollow, but it fades fast. Because now, when I think of contribution, I think of boundaries, not sacrifice. And when I think of family, I think of truth, not applause. Sometimes peace doesn't come from forgiveness. It comes from finally drawing the line no one else dared to. I didn't need their applause to know my worth. I just needed to stop funding my own silence. Now every morning sunlight hits my coffee cup and I remember contribution isn't measured in sacrifice, it's measured in honesty. If you've ever been told you're not enough, let this story remind you, your boundaries are your freedom. Drop a comment, tell me your story, and hit like, share, and subscribe for more real stories about strength family and the power of quiet revenge.